Okay, so you've downloaded T2 Laser, and you've unzipped the file, and so now you need to install it. So we're going to install this. So you've downloaded T2 Laser for your low power laser engraver, something like an Eleksmaker or something that you got from Banggood or GearBest, something of that nature, or a laser axe machine. And now you're switching to T2 Laser. So once you get it installed, it will automatically open up. It'll give you this little guy on the desktop here. I like to keep mine out of the way there. So the very first thing that you need to do is make sure that you've assembled your laser. You've got it all plugged in. The USB is plugged into the Nano, and you have the power turned on the controller. So the very first thing you do is you're going to load up T2 Laser, and we are going to hit the control laser button. Okay, and so this is what you're going to get. You need to go in here and select your COM port that your laser is attached to. I've only ever had one COM port in here. Whatever COM port is in there is my laser. If you have multiple ones, you have to select the one that is appropriate for your laser. The baud rate will automatically select itself and usually be correct there. So then you're going to hit the little lightning bolt to connect to your laser. And you'll see that I have Gerbil 1.1E ready. So we're going to go here, and that's the correct Gerbil that you want to be using at this time here in April 2017. 1.1E is the most stable current version that we're working with. There is a new 1.1F that is in this, and I'll show that to you here in just a second. But that just came out in this release, and this release is 1.3C of the T2 Laser. So now that you're in the T2 Laser controller, I don't know what Gerbil's installed on your machine when it came to you. It might be 0.9, it might be 1.1E, it might be some other Gerbil. But the very first thing that you need to do is you need to come in here and upload zacks firmware. So we're going to come down here to upload firmware 1.1E. We're going to select that. And it says your current firmware will be overwritten. That's fine. We want to do that. It's going to open up this window, and you don't want to just go away. You do want to watch this and make sure that we get 100% on each of these. If there's any errors, you'll have to do it again. And I have seen an error before, and then I had to re-upload the firmware. Okay, good. So the firmware went. Again, we're going to have to connect to the laser. Connected to COM port 3, 1.1E ready. We're still not ready to engrave just yet. The other thing we need to do is come in here and send default parameters. Sending default parameters sets you up with the most common parameters, and that's the parameters for your stepper motors, how many steps equal a millimeter, those sorts of things, which direction is positive, which direction is negative. So let me get my camera set up here, and I'll show you how we're going to test and make sure that everything is set up right. All right, so I'm back. So the camera is sitting on the opposite side from the control board where all of your wires come into and out of. It's on the opposite side. And so the side opposite to that is where 0, 0 is. So the bottom left is the opposite left side of the laser engraver. I have mine sitting on the workbench here sideways. However, if it's easier for you to conceptualize it, you might want to turn your laser so that it's facing you with the controller board on the further side from you, and that's standard. So what we're going to do is we're going to jog the laser to the right and to the left, and it went in the directions I expected it to go. It should go right for right, left for left. and then we're going to jog down. Okay, and so it came towards me, away from the camera, and that should have been up, but I pressed down. So this is why we do this. So we're going to go in here. The reason mine did that is because I replaced the stepper motor wires, and it reversed the polarity on them. I had to do that because one of my wires broke, and the ones that I ordered just happened to have a reverse polarity. They work fine, but they are reversed. So I have to reverse the y-axis. If I don't do this, everything's going to be flipped on the y-axis, and everything's going to come out all wrong. So now we're going to press down, and it goes down. That's great. So you can see we are, I'm stepping at 20 millimeters, so 2 centimeters every time I jog it. You can either jog it 1 millimeter, 5 millimeters, or 20 millimeters at a time, or 50. If you hover over here, it'll tell you jog step distance. That's not actually the steps. There's 80 steps in a millimeter. So when you jog 1, you're actually jogging 80 steps. But obviously, if you broke a millimeter down into 80ths, it'd take forever to jog around. So 1 is 1 millimeter, 5 is 5 millimeters, and we can jog around and make sure that the laser is working as it should. All right, so now we need to make sure that the laser comes on. So make sure that you have something underneath your laser. I have a piece of scrap wood in there that has a grid, and I'll show that to you here in a second. And that's for lining up my pieces. Under that, I have a piece of metal. You just go get a thin sheet of aluminum. That's the length and width of your laser. You don't want to burn into, if you have errors, one of the biggest things right now, if you're installing T2 laser and you're listening to me, turn off the sleep settings on your computer. Because if your computer tries to go to sleep while you're laser engraving, and it shouldn't, T2 should prevent that from happening. It's down here in, I believe, advanced, the fail-safe mode. So that's automatically selected. However, that can happen if your computer tries to go to sleep. It can leave the laser on and stop moving it, and it'll just burn a hole right through whatever it is that you're engraving. And then if you don't have, it'll catch something on fire. If you don't have an air assist going, if you don't have metal going, it's going to destroy your workbench. And I have cut into my workbench by accidentally cutting through something I didn't mean to. So make sure that you have a sheet of metal under there. And that'll really save your bacon there. Okay, so what we want to do is, this says 255 right here. 255 is max laser power. And that's because it's an 8-bit processor. So if we go to something lower, that'll be something less than full power. And it's not a percentage, because obviously 255 wouldn't be a percentage. But if we go down to, let's say, 10, and we turn the laser on, and my laser didn't come on, so I have to go to something higher. So this one's off, this one's on. So let's go up to 50. And we're going to turn it on. There we go. We got the laser on, and it's in low power mode. Make sure that you have your green glasses on. And so now the laser came on. That's great. That's perfect. So now we're going to turn the laser off. Turn it on, turn it off. Okay, so the laser comes on and off as we expect it to. If we went up to 255, it'd start burning. It might catch something on fire. So we don't want to do that. We want to set it at a low setting, somewhere between 1 and 50. And depending on the intensity on your laser, yours is probably going to be higher or lower than mine. So that's an individual thing. Okay, so now we've made sure that our laser turns on and off and it jogs in the right direction, so it's time for a test burn. So let's get out of here. We're going to go press X. And we're going to come in here, and the first thing that we need to do is, let's see. We are going to go to samples. That's what we're going to do. We're going to select a 50 millimeter circle, and we're going to auto zoom. All right, so this is what we're going to be cutting. This is not an image. It's not a grayscale. It's just a line, and if we click on information, this is one shape, meaning that the laser is just going to draw the circle. It's not going to go line by line like a printer. It's just going to trace the outline of it in one foul swoop. So one fell swoop. So if we go down here, these are your different settings on grayscale. We just want black and white. There is no grayscale in this. It's just a line. We can either do horizontal or diagonal engraving. Again, it's just a line. It's just going to follow the path of the line at full power. Feed rate. So feed rate, if you're cutting, you want it down as low as 100. 3,000's max on that. You probably don't want to go higher than 2,000, but for this, 1,000 works perfect. This limits the laser on how much power you give it. So we're saying that at minimum you can use 0, and at maximum you can use full power, 255. This is the resolution, how many scans per millimeter. At 0.1 millimeters, if you're creating some images, that's 254 dots per inch in Inkscape or Photoshop. 254 dots per inch is 0.1, and that's the highest resolution. Your laser, when perfectly focused, is going to be 0.1 millimeters in width. So there's no sense in going lower than 0.1. If you put 0.05, all your laser is doing is going over the area that it already went over. So 0.1 is the highest resolution you can get. 0.2 is for a little bit faster speed, but for this it doesn't matter. It's just going to draw the line. So, and the last thing we're going to do, come down to the output size. It's at 50 millimeters. I'm just going to cut this down to 10 millimeters. I don't need such a big circle. It's just a test circle. And then we're going to go in here and we're going to settings. And default, it starts at the lower left corner of this. So that means that the laser is going to start here, and then it's going to move here, and then it's going to start drawing the shape. So we need to define this point. Where is that point? So obviously you could do other settings, upper right, lower right, center start point. But for this, lower left is going to work perfect. So we're going to generate the G code. You probably have the trial version since you just downloaded it, and that's all you need at this point. Until you verify that all of this stuff works, don't spend your money on this. Zacks, the guy who designed it, will say the exact same thing I'm saying. It's that the trial is so that you can determine whether it works with your system, and it should work with your system. But make sure that it works with your system before you waste 1 cent on something that's not going to work for you. He doesn't want that, and it's no good for him or anybody else. So with the trial, you get 30 minutes of run and 10,000 lines of code. The reason I bring that up is you see the circle that we just created is 69 lines of code. So that's not very much to just create this little circle. So you have up to 10,000 lines of code. And I'll do another little engraving here in a second to show you an idea of like how big of something you could do. But each project's going to vary a little bit. So this is just 69 lines of code. It's only going to take 3 seconds for it to burn. Again, you have 30 minutes and 10,000 lines of code you can generate. And when that 30 minutes expires, or when you generate that 10,000 lines of code, you can close the program, open it back up, and your 30 minutes starts over again, and your 10,000 lines start over again. So if you want to work on bigger projects, you're going to have to buy the registration. But if you're just working with some smaller projects, you're just getting into this, just work with the trial version until you got it all sorted out and you think you're going to be happy with the software. Okay, so now we need to define where the lower left corner is. So we can either turn on the low power button, which is on the controller. For me, it may be on your laser, or you might not have one at all. So if you don't have one at all, we're going to go in here and we're going to turn this down to 50, and then we're going to turn the laser on. And that's going to show us where our laser's at, and we need to focus that. So let me grab the camera and I'll show you kind of what we're looking at here. See there, it's a nice big circle. If we bring it in, we want it down to a pinpoint. That looks pretty good. For what we're doing here, that's going to be good enough. Good enough. Alright, so now we need to tell where the lower left is. So I'm going to put it just over that other circle. So we're going to jog up 5, 10, jog over maybe 15. Turn the laser back on. Oh, just about right. Go up a little bit. Now you can see the X is -20, the Y is 15. If I hit send the G code right now, it'll go back to 0, 0 and start drawing. That is not what I want. I want it to start drawing right where it's at. So to do that, you're either going to click the right-click the home machine. Right-click the little house button, or you're going to go in here and set the origin of your workpiece. Now you see that it says 0, 0. So it thinks that the lower left is right where it's at right now. If you forgot what you picked, lower left, lower right, if you click view, it's going to show it right here. The big orange dot is where it's going to start out. That's where the origin is. That's where 0, 0 is. If you hit S for simulate, if you hit upper left, the orange dot would be over here. If you had middle, orange dot would be here. Hit S for simulate. It's going to show you what the laser is going to do. It's just going to draw the circle. Great. So one last thing that we want to do is we want to have the laser in low power mode draw the extents of where we're going to be drawing to make sure that this is going to be drawn on the piece of wood and not on like say our grid or a scrap piece or try to draw off the page. The way we do that is we go into machine and we put engrave frame laser on. You must have this right here, this setting turned down from 255, otherwise it's going to burn the frame, and we don't want to burn the frame. We just want an idea in low power mode of where is this circle going to be drawn. So engrave laser at 50, yes, up, down, there, okay, perfect. So that happens to fall within the area that we're looking. That's going to fall on our workpiece, so we're ready to send this. All right, so send the G code. And there we go. We have our circle. So that worked out great. All right, so now we have our circle. And so that was 69 lines, and it took us 2 seconds. So one other thing we want to turn on here, if we go down to advanced, estimated time remaining. This will tell us now when we send it how much time is remaining on this green bar until the project's done. So we are going to do one last thing here. I'm just going to show you how I would go about burning a project. So if we wanted to make this coaster, what we would do is we'd come in here to T2 laser, we'd open the, I clicked the wrong button, I think. Open image, and we're going to select our American flag. Everything that's black is going to be engraved. Everything that's white is not going to be engraved. We're going to start from left to right, and so you can see you have either black and white. Dithered is just going to be a bunch of dots, and since this is only a black and white image, it doesn't really show too much what would happen here in grayscale, because it's a black and white image, but this is made up of a bunch of dots is what this is. And then we have we have grayscale mode. For this, we're going to select black and white. We want to do a horizontal engraving. Horizontal engraving means it's going to go this line, and then it's going to go down 0.2 millimeters, and then draw the next line, and then 0.2 millimeters, 0.2 millimeters, until it gets all the way down here and it's drawn all of these lines. So we're going to burn this at 1,000 millimeters per minute. Power, full power. Resolution 0.2. So Normally I burn this and it's 90 millimeters wide. However, because it was a 0.2 resolution when I brought it in, it's at 180 millimeters. So that's double the size that I normally do it at. So I don't want to do that. So let's go in and we're going to change the resolution to 0.1, which is what I normally use. We're going to reopen the image. All right, now let's take a look at the resolution. So our output width is going to be 90 millimeters now by 44 millimeters. All right, so we're all set up. We're using a corner start point, lower left. We're going to generate the G code. So this takes a second. So I just did this a few minutes ago, and I expect it's somewhere in the 6,000 to 7,000 lines of G code area. It should be somewhere in there. Oh, I said that I wanted to save the G code. I didn't want to save the G code. You don't need to save the G code. Anyway, so again, yes, 6,426 lines of G code. So that is for the slate coaster.
Slate coaster is 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters, and we're engraving 90 by 40 of it. And so that would take approximately 25 minutes.
And it would use 6,426 lines. So if you just open up T2 laser, you would have basically 5 minutes to get this all set up and burn that, and it would be within your 10,000 G code or 10,000 line limit and within your 30-minute limit. So that's kind of an idea of how big and how fast is something that you could engrave with just the trial version. Obviously, if you like the trial version, you know, you can get those restrictions taken off. It's $39.95 for the software. I don't get a dime of that. I'm just a user just like you. I just happen to really like this software. I think it works really great. If you like this video and you want to figure out how to do more complicated projects, something other than just verifying that your system works, please let me know what types of things you'd like to see. If you have any problems other than it not jogging left and right the directions that you wanted it to, if it just doesn't jog at all, let's talk about one.
So a couple of things that can go wrong why your motors aren't moving at all. It could be because your power button is turned off, and your board might look a little different than mine. If you have one of the new Mana SE boards, it's not going to have that second button on there. That's the low power laser button, and that's just for focusing the laser. The first button there, you turn it on, you get that red light on the board. That means that it is on. So if when you try to jog the buttons and nothing happens, it could be that the power is turned off there. The other issue that you might have is that your stepper driver has improper voltage, and so right here is a little Phillips head screwdriver deal, and if you take a multimeter and go from this post to that little screw, you can get a voltage, and then you can go on there and adjust it by turning the little Phillips screw more or less voltage. Also, if for some reason your circle isn't lining up, it's not going all the way around back to the same spot, either your belts are too loose, too tight, or your stepper driver voltage is wrong. If you're not getting the control of the laser power by adjusting where it said 255, where the jog buttons are, right here, then and you have one of these older boards, you need to go in between the nano there, and there's a little jumper, and you need to move that jumper, and the directions for that are in zacks software there. Mine looks a little different here because I actually have my nano pulled out in a little shield here, and that's because I have home switches set up. You don't need those to work. Those are just if you're doing repeat projects. It's a little beneficial. But yeah, so this little guy where the USB plugs in, he's called a nano. So if you hear people talking about a nano, that's what they're talking about, is this little guy here. He can be ripped off by just pulling him off the board, but you want to disconnect him first and have no power going to him. So this setup should work for for any of you guys,
the Elex makers, laser axes, or any of the clones of those systems, if you're trying to set up for one of the new Elex maker machines, the Eleksegg, the Eleksmill, eleksdraw, those configuration settings are down here in settings. You don't need to select the Elex laser one if you're using an Elex laser, unless you're switching back and forth. It will automatically set it up in laser mode because this is T2 laser, unless you select one of these. Like if you're using an Eleksegg and then you're going back to an Elex laser, then you need to come in here and select this. Also, there's a couple of other firmwares in here. 1.1e is the one you should be using. However, there's the old one, which is 0.9, which doesn't allow you to adjust power on the fly, and there's some other things that aren't in there. And then 1.1f is the new one, and I'm going to tell you right now not to use it at this point, just because I don't know what it does, what benefits it has, because it just came out for us to use with T2 laser this morning. So I may be telling you a little different here in a week or two once I've had a chance to try it out. Get it up and running, install T2 laser, upload your firmware, reset your default parameters, make sure your X and Y's go in the right direction, make sure your laser turns on and that you can adjust the power up and down using this little window here and turning the laser on and off. And then make sure that you run a test circle and that the ends of the circles line up, and that the circle is the size that you expect it to be. And then you're ready to go. You can start loading up all sorts of images and burning those and testing those. So that's all I have for you guys today, and happy lasing.